Before we begin today's episode, just a reminder, Shen Yun Symphony is putting on a 2 special performances event at the Lincoln Center on October 22nd, which is this coming Sunday in New York City. Now, tickets are on sale now. Shen Yun Symphony will feature original pieces from their annual Shen Yun Performing Arts Tour around the world, as well as classical pieces like the Butterfly Lover and Dvorak Symphony No. 9 from the New World, Movement 4, as well as Sibelius, Finlandia. So I'll be going to the event and I hope to see you there. China has officially condemned Israel and backed Palestine as the evil axis prepares to meet in Beijing, and the CCP's so-called neutral position is not that neutral. Let's talk about it. Welcome to China Insider, I'm David Zhang. If the Russian invasion of Ukraine has taught us anything, it is that the CCP displays a so-called neutrality, which at the end of the day simply means not condemning Russia, and in fact siding with Putin. It also marked the beginning of realizing what we now refer to as the axis of evil. Now, this camp has Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea, and various terrorist organizations as the main players. Some of them, like Vladimir Putin and leaders of the Taliban, are set to visit Beijing this week for the Belt and Road Forum. Amidst the looming invasion of Gaza, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi has spoken to 3 different countries: Turkey, Saudi, and Iran. Now, in his calls, Wang Yi declared the Israel invasion to be, quote, a collective punishment of Gaza's civilians with actions beyond self-defense. And in the call with Saudi Arabia's counterpart, Wang Yi also condemned the continued Israeli counteroffense. Wang told Prince Faisal bin Fahar al-Saud that, quote, Israel's actions have gone beyond self-defense. Now, this sounds like that Wang Yi, or the CCP's position, has gone from neutral to now siding closer with Hamas and Palestine, and condemning Israel in the process, and doing so under the guise of peace. More so on the surface, the CCP still is preaching that both sides should use caution and exercise restraint, but in reality, the CCP really wants things to be messy. Now, this is very typical, right? It's like a CCP virtual signaling, attempting to be the bigger one here and appear peaceful. It's trying to do the same with the Ukraine war too. Not condemning Hamas action is already a sign that the CCP's position favors it. And now, its long-term partners in the regions are looking at China as the one that's acting like it is the leader. It's crystal clear that, just like with Ukraine, the CCP has abandoned the relationship with Israel for their terrorist allies, and it has abandoned Ukraine in favor of Russia. Now, it's a good thing because just like Ukraine, maybe Israel can finally learn the true nature of the communist regime and stop being so friendly with them. The clear objective of the axis of evil, as Iran and China in the Middle East and Iran and Russia in Europe, what they've done is to pin the blames on the victim, the one that was attacked first, in this case Israel, for attempting to destroy the people in Gaza. What they fail to mention is that the goal is to eliminate Hamas, a terrorist group, as the counteroffense. To most people, as the CCP is arguing, or at least in terms of to the eyes of the layman, the CCP is preaching peace and calling for a ceasefire. So technically, they're the ones that's virtually better, right? Well, not quite. In reality, what they're doing is capitalizing and co-opting virtue as a way in which they want to appear like they're superior. But they don't actually have any virtue, as they're still persecuting Muslim Uyghurs in Xinjiang, so they're in no position to preach peace for the Muslims in Gaza. But here they do stand. And this was actually a question asked today by a viewer in the polling. Now, I do these often, so make sure to come and vote for which topic you want to hear. Now, this viewer at HAWAX or HAWAX5828 asked, I'm really interested because China's government is so bad for Muslims in their own country, so why would they support Palestine? Something's off. Well, to answer your question, HAWAX, the answer is quite simple when it comes to time to choose. The CCP will always side with the evil. And if you look back at the history of the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party has not sided with the good side for once, except during the counterterrorism era where they pretended to be friendly with the United States so that they can get that golden decade to develop. But other than that, right, that's because communism is evil. And so there's no way to put it other than the fact that whether that's communism, Marxism, or socialism, what they all preach is the fact that it's a doctrine of evil. And they naturally side with the evil regimes of the world. And they use and justify the use of violence. Marxists call for the rallying of the proletariats, right, from the working class. So from the CCP's perspective, a struggle against the United States in terms of the Middle East, right, in terms of the proxy warfares, they line up with the communist teachings because technically they're rallying together those that have been suppressed or oppressed by the United States. And this victim mentality is very much capitalized by communists to try to overthrow or to change the status quo in a certain area. Now, since the latest conflict began, China's social media and internal narrative have focused on painting Israel as the enemy, including one social media influencer calling Israel the new Nazis.
哈马斯不就抓了几个什么以色列的军官、犹太的什么开垦团吗？是不是这些人本来就是殖民主义的马前卒啊，是走狗啊？难道不该抓吗？所以说很明显，家人们啊，这个哈马斯还是太温柔了。还是太温柔了。你觉得当年世界人民面对血债血偿的这个纳粹啊、法西斯、日本军国主义该怎么报复？现在的以色列不就是犹太版的纳粹吗？还有军国主义吗？对不对？只不过啥呀？这场冲突，家人们彻底撕下了以色列军事力量什么先进的、强大这个画皮，7个城镇的渗透，无人机海的攻击。家人们，火箭弹饱和轰炸呀，让什么以色列铁穹防空系统成了皇帝的新衣。现在的以色列国防，家人们真的是一座四面漏风的破房子，就差有一个人踹一脚了，对不对？
Yeah, someone either didn't study history well or is intentionally doing this. Just look back at last year. Instead of condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the CCP calls their partnership with Russia limitless. With the Middle East, China seeks to use the Belt and Road Initiative from the western region of China, reaching all the way into the Middle East through Pakistan, Afghanistan, and across in Central Asia. And the goal here is to control and to extend its influence, both a geopolitical goal or, in terms of the ideology, exporting the authoritarian ideology westwards, as well as it's a concrete action to grab allegiance from those countries. Now, by becoming more vocal in this region, the CCP's goal is clear. It's to try to influence the leadership attention of the Middle East. In other words, it's trying to win the narrative war over the United States. Look here, China is the loudest in the room. It's the one first to call out for peace, right? Look at that. They're condemning Israel's actions. They're siding with the Muslim world, which means that China is siding with us in the Middle East rather than with Israel, who clearly is an ally of the United States. Today, Foreign Minister Wang Yi met with Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov, and their discussion was full of self-praising juice. Like, ooh, as members of the Security Council, we must do more in the global ever-changing landscape. Well, the irony is that his buddy, Russia, was the one major player that had stirred this whole mess to begin with. Also, the saddest part about this is that while the CCP is preaching this so-called global peace, it has not even attempted to bring Chinese nationals home. Now, China has not yet launched an official evacuation program, but Beijing has somehow urged its Chinese citizens overseas in Israel to take commercial flights, which are still available, and return home as soon as possible. Now, the Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said, quote, "Commercial flights between China and Israel are still in operation. We will seriously judge and study the security situation in Palestine and Israel, closely track the opening of local air and land routes and security conditions, and do our best to provide assistance to Chinese citizens." Now, if you've ever heard the same story, again, it was repeated in Ukraine. Now, the Chinese people in Ukraine, they were stranded, and that's a whole nother story. But China's neighbors, South Korea, they sent in a special force and took not only Koreans home, but also Japanese citizens too. And Taiwan has already assisted the evacuation of 140 people too. Now, online, people started circulating the situation with Chinese people in Israel over the last week. On October 15th, a screenshot of a group of 292 Chinese students studying in Israel asked the person in charge, a teacher named Hu, of the education department of the CCP, and their Israeli embassy, whether or not the Chinese side had arranged for evacuation of the overseas Chinese people, and that the students from other countries already were picked up by their own government. They even said that even the Indian students have flown out of here before us. To which Mr. Hu, the person in charge, replies by giving a final warning on discussing unrelated matters. So the livelihood and the safety of these students are unrelated matters. Anyways, so the Hamas lives matters to the CCP, but not the Chinese students. Instead of responding directly, the Chinese embassy officials in Israel forwarded a link to the group, and then the announcement says to remind citizens in Israel to take precaution. It's another way of saying F you. And many Chinese students were disappointed by the CCP's treatment of its citizens, with one student exclaiming, quote, "I didn't realize until I left the country that the movie Wolf Warrior was the biggest lie of it all." And another asked when the CCP embassy would condemn Hamas to ensure the safety of the Chinese people in this country. And of course, there's no answer. Now, Wolf Warrior is a movie, and the student that mentioned it was talking about how the plot of the movie is a Chinese special force soldier. He was able to become a superhero, saving Chinese people in other countries, right? Displaying the mightiness of the CCP. But in reality, that's not the case. Now, if the CCP was truly capable for calling for freedom and peace, they could have easily condemned Hamas, the actions of Hamas, like what India did, but still offer peace. China has not done so, much like in Ukraine. Now, you see here, this is a diverging trend, right? If you look at India and China, both of them want to fight to be the leader of the global south, whereas India's approach is more Western value aligned, and the CCP's approach is by being friendly with dictators and military aggressors and authoritarian leaders. And so, to fight for the leadership seat of the global south, and the CCP chooses to act on all affairs much more attentively in Central Asia and in the Middle East, and to be friends with these countries. Yet, when we closely examine why the regime would choose the Palestine side over Israel, it's very simple because that's where their interests align. And simply because having a relationship with both, for example, right, losing Israel's relationship, it won't impact China's influence with the rest of the Middle East. But losing a relationship with Palestine directly changes its relationship with countries like Iran, Syria, Lebanon, the Taliban, and Russia, and so on. And so for Xi Jinping, which is on the verge of hosting this Belt and Road Forum in Beijing over the next 2 days, Putin is set to visit Xi again on this Wednesday. And so we can already see that it's a relationship in the making of the evil axis. This Belt and Road Forum will be the gathering of the global south in those areas where there's all sorts of evil, and plus certain Western countries. But it's an attempt by Xi Jinping to flex his diplomatic reach, and that's centered around those countries of the axis of evil. Now, when viewed in this context, we can see that the fight over the global south leadership, or the fight to replace the United States or to defeat the United States, it's built on numbers. It's built on getting more countries on board. And so when we look at this, right, there's about 140 countries who will attend the Belt and Road Forum. And to them, numbers over quality of different countries, right? Many of them are third world countries, or dictatorships, or, aggressors, like I said. But it sounds like that China has so many friends, right? 140 of them. They sound quite popular. Compare them to the United States, who only has maybe a handful of true allies with 30 to 50 more partners. Which one sounds more convincing to be the global leader? And so looking back at the Israel-Hamas conflict, it's very apparent that the CCP is creating a public image which places Xi Jinping atop a throne of influence. However, strategically speaking, it would be better if the Middle East was in much more chaos and the war escalates into a regional conflict. That also benefits the CCP as well. And I previously talked about this, so I'll leave the link in here, which they use the three warfare strategy to defeat the United States. And that's it today for the episode and my analysis on why China has decided to openly criticize Israel and to back up Palestine, Iran, and such. If you enjoy the content, make sure to leave a like, comment below your thoughts on this topic, and as well as subscribe to our channel today. All right, I'm David Zhang. This is China Insider. We'll see you next time.